have the 2020 Classic Tetris World Championships been canceled? Short answer is, not yet. Long answer is, it's complicated. This is going to be a rundown of everything we know so far. There's a lot of things that really suck about the current situation the world is in. And one of the things that sucks, maybe not as much as some of the other things, but still kind of sucks, is that virtually all gatherings and events, the things that give us a reprieve from the bustle of daily life and help bring us all together into supportive communities, well, they've all been put on hold or outright canceled. Festivals, conventions, sporting events, all the way up to the Olympics. And the inevitable discussion I've seen come up on Twitch and Discord discussions is, are the Classic Tetris World Championships still going to happen? As of now, it's up in the air. It was already going to be an unusual year to begin with when the host of the tournament, the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, announced that their 2020 dates would be August 14th through the 16th, 2 months before their usual date in October. Players such as Corion speculated on Twitter that it might be more difficult to arrange trip accommodations during the busy summer travel months, but on the other hand, this meant that it could be easier for more new younger players to attend since they'd be out of school or college for summer break. But then the 2020 schedule hit a bit of a speed bump. The West Coast qualifier, which for the past 2 years had been the inaugural event of each season, had its host convention, the Los Angeles Retro City Festival, be canceled. The organizers stated that putting on the show is an incredible task and that hosting future events would not be feasible for them, which is a bummer. But fortunately, a substitute was found. A month later, it was announced that the SoCal Retro Gaming Expo would be hosting a SoCal qualifier, effectively a rebranded West Coast qualifier in April. But that wasn't all. A brand new Southeast qualifier was unveiled for Georgia. The Midwest Championship became an officially sanctioned competition. Green Tea had organized a brand new CTWC Japan. Among all the other events normally scheduled, it was set to be the biggest year yet. And then, well, you know what happened next, and everything began to fall apart. Perfect Clear, the convention that would be hosting the Southeast qualifier, was postponed to the week of August 20th to the 21st, a week after the World Championships. And since the first place prize for the qualifier is a travel voucher and a guaranteed spot in the World Championships, well, that raised a bit of a conundrum. But the complications were just getting started. The SoCal Retro Gaming Expo got postponed indefinitely, and finally, the Portland Retro Gaming Expo itself got canceled outright for 2020. And with no clear ending in sight for social distancing protocols, it's likely that any convention or gathering associated with NES Tetris that hasn't canceled yet is at this point delaying the inevitable. So does that mean that the Classic Tetris World Championships is canceled altogether? Since it's become a bit of a flagship event for the convention, the Portland Retro Gaming Expo's website actually addresses this specifically in their FAQ about the cancellation, to which the answer is, well, not necessarily. The CTWC team is looking into alternate ways to host the tournament, and the official Classic Tetris Twitter confirms this, stating that there will be a champion crowned somehow, some way this year. So how would they go about doing that? Well, there's a couple different options. First, by rescheduling the live event to perhaps occur at a different place or a different time. There's a couple complications though. First, organizing an independent event is pricey. The tournament lost a lot of money in 2011, partly due to an expensive venue and low turnout, and almost didn't continue. Being picked up by the Portland Expo the following year provided a lot of stability and security. The room they used last year cost over $1,000 a day to rent, and even that ended up being way too crowded. They were poised to need a much bigger room this year. Add in setup and takedown days along with additional services needed, and the price tag multiplies fast. The tournament certainly has a much bigger following now than it did in 2011, but it could be more difficult to attract sponsors if attendance is a big question mark. Even if there's another convention or venue that could host them, as there have been a few expos that have rescheduled to later in the year, they'd most likely be limited to options in Portland for practical reasons, as that's where most of the tournament organizers live and have all their stuff. But the reality is, it may just not be practical to host an in-person event this year. Huge international competitions kind of need confirmation months in advance, for planning logistics, courting sponsorships, and for players to arrange trip details. As much as it would be unfortunate, as a worldwide community meeting up in one spot and getting to hang out in real life is one of the best parts of the event, following public health and safety guidelines is the #1 priority. So, is there another option? Well, for the past 2 years, online Tetris competitions, such as the Classic Tetris Monthly, have kind of been trailblazing the way for how you do a Classic Tetris World Championships over the internet, assembling an ever more efficient format and workflow through many months of trial and error. There's still several caveats, of course. One is that online play sometimes comes with accusations of cheating, with players using home systems and potentially modified equipment. The online community has generally been able to snuff out attempts to circumvent the rules, but the real-life tournaments have have always kind of been a final bastion of certifying someone's legitimacy to dispel any lingering doubts. No one could deny a player's skill if they demonstrated on public equipment in front of a live audience. Heck, there were some who even doubted Joseph until he showed up to compete in 2018. So an online tournament, especially if there's a significant prize pool involved, will have the additional hurdle of implementing stringent anti-cheating precautions. Another issue is people's internet going out. When you're dealing with a couple dozen connections from all over the globe, something's bound to happen. You just gotta hope it doesn't happen during a big moment. Perhaps the biggest effect in the actual games will be the ability to use same piece sets. A few years ago, the World Championship began using cards with modified ROMs, where both players could select an identical predetermined piece sequence to ensure fairness. Most of the time, this isn't going to make that much of a difference, because the players are going to end up with different board setups where the same pieces can have different usefulness. But it can have a huge impact when it comes to droughts. For example, both Jeff and Svavar topped out from the same enormous drought in the 2018 World Championships here, but in this game between Quaid and Jeff in the 2019 Desert Qualifier, which didn't use same piece sets, Quaid got served 2 huge droughts toward the beginning of the game that Jeff didn't have to deal with, and the second one killed him. Pretty much all the major online tournaments use different piece sets because it's a whole additional level of hassle to try and universally coordinate same piece sets online. If one wants to stay in the good graces of the Tetris company, the biggest sponsor over the past few years, there is technically a completely legal way to do it if everyone buys EverDrives and rips the ROMs themselves and only downloads a patch, which at that point the organizers would have to debate if that's a reasonable requirement to have for people's home setups. Which is related to another argument I've heard people make against doing it online that I actually think is part of the benefit. The argument is that a lot of veteran players don't currently have streaming setups, so they wouldn't be able to participate. My response would be, well, in most cases it's actually pretty cheap and easy to get a streaming setup. I made a video tutorial about this last month. If you already have an NES Tetris setup, all you need to do is get a couple more cables and a $10 capture card, download OBS, and you're good. Even if you have to build an entire new setup from scratch, it's going to be a lot cheaper than buying a plane ticket to Portland. And that makes it a heck of a lot easier for some players to be able to participate without having to win a free trip at one of the regional qualifiers. Another positive is that tournament organizers would no longer be limited by the confines of physical sets and locations. You could have as many virtual side stages as you wanted for additional matches or other competition formats, or heck, just run the event over a longer period of time. The previous years had a heavily confined schedule due to being part of a convention that operated for just 3 days at limited daytime hours. The Classic Tetris Monthly is able to accommodate well over 100 players in its brackets by having several tiers, and scheduling all but the top tier to play out gradually over the course of the month, feeding into a climactic finale featuring the semifinals and finals of all the lower tiers. Basically, if the CTWC organizers had any truly outside-the-box ideas on how to restructure the tournament, this year might be the perfect year to test them out. But hey, even if trying to make a full-fledged event on the scale of the previous years proves to be too much of a hassle given the current limitations, because there may be additional complicating factors I don't know about, the fact that it's 2020 provides maybe an option to rebrand something as a best of the decade competition with an elite group of previously established players. Classic Tetris Monthly had a champions event in the works which would have pitted all the past winners of major online and regional events against each other, but it's been pushed back indefinitely. Perhaps CTWC 2020 could be something similar. In summary, it would suck if we didn't get to see a live tournament this year, especially with how it was going to be the first year for many prominent members of the community to attend. But perhaps the silver lining is we'll get to see something new. The CTWC Japan kicked things off by revamping into an online tournament called CTWC Japan Lite, with Green Tea brewing up some sophisticated homemade broadcasting software and overlays to do things like show every player qualifying simultaneously. The event featured some unconventional 3-way matches and overall was really enjoyable and exciting to watch. No matter the form, there's a lot to look forward to with whatever this season of competitive Tetris may have to offer. See you in the next video.